On the Michael Medved show, a big confrontation between Valerie Jarrett and Rand Paul over air traffic control. Now, who do you think is right? Is there any doubt? Rand Paul, the center of so many national issues right now. He is, of course, the junior senator from Kentucky. Senator Paul, thanks so much for joining us always.
Glad to be with you, Michael.
Well, I wanted to go to this idea, which has promoted, I think, for political reasons against you, that you have switched your position regarding drone attacks on Americans who are an imminent threat of violence. I will say that the New York Sun today, they had a lead editorial where it said that your position on this and your clarity on this, they say, is evidence that Mr. Paul is emerging as a leader who is both reasonable and principled, a man capable of drawing the kind of distinctions that the best of our legislators, judges, and, yes, presidents have always had to draw. Nice to hear those words, I imagine.
Yeah, and I think some people misunderstood. You know, I spoke for 13 hours on the filibuster, and I thought after 13 hours I would have gotten my point across. But my point really was opposing targeted assassination of American citizens, whether it be by drones or snipers or spears, knives, or clubs. It was that the U.S. government can't claim the authority to kill someone who's not involved in combat. But I did say all along throughout the 13 hours that if people are attacking the Twin Towers, if people are attacking or shooting a policeman, that we've always acknowledged that law enforcement can respond with deadly force. And once again, it doesn't matter what the technology is, but law enforcement can always respond with deadly force when someone's using deadly force against them.
Yeah, and let me point out to people, you have very clear testimony on constitutional and counterterrorism implications of targeted killing, and you make it very clear that in the right applications, drone technology can be a very effective weapon.
Well, for our soldiers, if there are soldiers that are shooting against and they're on the other side of the mountain, sending a drone around the mountain to get the soldiers before they shoot you is a good military tactic. And the point I was making was that the things that are occurring in a battlefield overseas where there is no due process are different than in our country. Because in our country, if you're accused of being associated with terrorism, which according to the Department of Justice means missing fingers, changed hair color, weatherized ammunition, multiple guns, more than 7 days food in your house, if that's the criteria, I really think that kind of accusation you should get a trial by jury and an attorney and not be declared an enemy combatant and sent to Guantanamo Bay. So our country, we do have rights that our soldiers are fighting for, and we don't give up on those. But it really wasn't so much the technology as the Bill of Rights that I was trying to defend.
I think that was clear to most people who so enthusiastically applauded your successful filibuster. Let me go to another issue that you've been very outspoken on. What do you think of the president's handling of the air traffic mess right now?
You know, I think it's inexcusable for him to consider getting rid of people who provide a really invaluable task, something we absolutely have to have, which is air traffic control. He's also referred to meat inspectors. He's taken away Capitol Hill police from protecting the Senate and other buildings. And at the same time, he found $250 million to send to Egypt. He found F-16s to send to Egypt. He found M1 tanks to send to Egypt. They're building bridges and all kinds of infrastructure around the world, but he doesn't have enough money for the absolutely necessary stuff in our country. So the fact that he won't shift money around from less important things to more important things shows that he's either playing a game to try to get his way on the sequester, or that he really is jeopardizing the safety of our skies by, saying that we don't have enough money for this, when in reality, why don't we cut travel? Why don't we quit rehiring people when people retire? There are all kinds of ways to save money around here. Why don't we quit spending, $5 million studying some kind of golden fish to see how they work collectively, or $1.5 million on roll-up beef jerky? There's all kinds of stuff to be cut if he were a leader.
And I'm sure you would be willing to help him find some of that stuff. In fact, let's make some news here. Senator Paul, if the president were to call you later today and say, let's help craft a means whereby we can get all of these air traffic controllers back to work. None of this once every 2 weeks furlough day. Would you be willing to cooperate with the President of the United States on doing that?
Absolutely. I would take his phone call any day of the week. I would sit down with the people in charge of the particular department, and we'd go item by item. And this is what he would do if he were responsible about this. I would go down item by item for that department. I would look at their travel expenses. I would look at their mailing expenses. I would look at postage. I would look at every item and say, what can we cut back so we don't have to lay off air traffic controllers?
You're still, I read some of your statements earlier today about the immigration reform issue. I believe that almost everyone, including the most enthusiastic supporters of reform, and I'm one of them, agree with you that we should use this occasion to make sure that we don't make the kind of mistakes with future legal immigrants to this country that we made with the Tsarnaevs. That's the point, isn't it?
Yeah, and I've been talking about this problem for over a year, so I'm not, the President and some of the Democrats have been saying, oh, you're trying to use this tragedy. It's not really true. About a year and a half ago, we caught 2 Iraqi immigrants who came here on refugee or asylum status, and they were plotting to buy Stinger missiles, and it turns out one of them had their fingerprints on an unexploded IED and was in our database, and we didn't pick it up. And I asked the question, how are these people getting into our country without adequate scrutiny? So I think if we're going to address immigration reform, we need to address the national security aspects. And I would look at refugee status, particularly from certain countries. I would look at student visas. President Bush put in place something called NSEERS, which was extra scrutiny for 25 countries that have elements of radical jihad, and President Obama canceled that out. President Obama has also canceled the funding for training armed pilots. I talked to a pilot the other day, and he says, I've been in the armed pilot program for 7 years. I'm ex-military. I want to have a weapon in the cockpit, but it's just too darn expensive and so many days away from my family. They won't let me do it at home in my state. And this is the kind of leadership we're getting.
Yeah, it wants to make it harder for pilots to arm themselves. That's Rand Paul. He's the junior senator from Kentucky. And I can't say that I disagree with anything that you've just said. We will be right back.
Michael, you know what? You make a lot of sense.
The Michael Medved